You know, originally I was going to talk about New Hampshire first, but let's face it, we all kind of know what's happening over there, so we'll get into that a little later. Right now, let's just go straight into what's going on right now over at the border. And for those of you who might not have been keeping up, just to kind of set the scene a little bit, last month in December, over 300,000 illegal immigrants came into the country. That was just December, right? So 300,000 immigrants coming over the border illegally in just December alone. And because of this, of course, some states had enough. Now,
Okay, so that's just the one. That's just the ones that were counted and processed.
yes, exactly. So Lord knows how many actually made it in December. We could be talking 400,000, 500,000. We have no idea. And thankfully, Texas decided to stand up and actually do something about it. So, of course, this was an example of what was going on. Hey, Robin Hood Capitalist just subscribed. Thank you.
DJ.
So, over here we got what was happening prior, before Texas got involved, which was some of the original fencing that they put up. They had the Biden administration had Border Patrol come in, literally tear down the border so that illegal migrants could just come on in as many as they want, right? They're just coming in by the, like as we saw, over 300,000 in 1 month alone. So obviously, after seeing this happen time and time again, the governor, Greg Abbott, actually decided to call in the National Guard.
National Guard told migrants approaching.
Turn off the audio. Called in National Guard and fully secured the border. They put up new fencing, more barbed wire, had the National Guard out there in force, making sure no one could cross. Really just doing everything they could just to kind of keep things at bay. And for the most part, it was working out pretty well, actually. By all accounts, every video you could find was people just no longer trying to use Texas as a way to get into the country.
At least this one part, because it's a small portion that they brought in the guard for.
It is, and it's that portion where if you saw those pictures of the news of like those thousands and thousands of people packed under an underpass and all this stuff, this was the area. This was the area they were talking about. This was one of the main entry points for a lot of illegal immigration, and where, you know, the Biden administration was really just waving people in nonstop. Because of course, you know, they really want to make sure they come through Texas of all places. But the Biden administration, of course, didn't like the fact Texas was actually standing up and doing what was needed to be done. So they took it to the Supreme Court, and recently, unfortunately, the Supreme Court voted to actually allow federal agents to go in there and tear down the Texas border. Which, we should probably talk about that first, because obviously Republicans have the majority on the Supreme Court right now. And yet, they voted in favor of the Biden administration to actually demolish the border and allow more illegal immigrants coming into this country. And the main person who changed here was a Trump appointee, ACB. So
yeah, you would expect Roberts. That's no shock. But,
oh yeah, and if you notice, I didn't even count him because he always votes Democrat, right? He always, almost every time it comes up, he always seems to vote to the left.
And I don't know why it is, but it's always the Republican nominated judges that flip. You never ever see one from the other side flip on a key issue.
Oh, I know. Never. Not once. I can't think of any time I've seen it. And I know some people have been going on like, oh, well, she's Catholic, and of course all the people coming across the border are Catholic. That's why she did. And you know, some people of course saying, oh, well, she's a woman, so she just you know, thinking emotion. Also, I'm like, I don't really think it's that exactly, because she's had a good record up till now. I just don't know exactly why she would. I mean, admittedly, it's a tough thing to say that the states have superiority to the federal government when it comes to the nation's border, but I really did not expect her to actually lean to the left on the issue at the end of the day. I expected her kind of just to go with, really just what the other Republicans went with, right? Like, I expected her kind of just to stay the line, but no, she broke ranks, same as Roberts always does, and actually voted to allow the Biden administration to dismantle our border.
So it makes you wonder. Some of these things that we've been kind of counting as a win on election security and some of Trump's issues and all these things, it was just sort of given that the Supreme Court's going to rule a certain way. Do we really know that? At this point, I don't know that we do.
No, not at all. I mean, Obviously, you have some very strong supporters who will not break, obviously. But like you said, it's never going to be a Democrat that breaks in favor of the Republican Party. It's always going to be the inverse every single time. So we can't ever count on that, right? And what we can count on is, like you said, Roberts always siding with the Democrats. And now apparently we have to worry about ACB as well, which was not to be expected. Because, I mean, remember, the left hated her. I mean, the left was talking about how she was a religious nut job and how she was insane because she wanted to have a family of all things. Can you imagine wanting to have a big family? I mean, clearly, well, apparently the FBI was, of course, investigating or, putting people on a watch list for being religious, wanting to have big families, and shopping at Bass Pro Shops. So I guess she fits the mold pretty well.
That was another interesting story, the whole monitoring if you shopped at Dick's or Bass Pro Shops or sporting goods stores. But no, it's absolutely ridiculous. But I've got to say, I never did read the actual opinions because when it was first coming down, it was coming fast and furious. And what I thought I thought I was reading opinions, and then you get into the middle of it, and you're like, oh, it's satire. And so I read a bunch of satire, and I never saw the actual opinions as to what the legal reasonings were behind the rulings. So I'm still curious about that, but it's just I thought this was a slam dunk going in, right?
Yeah, exactly. I think we all did, right? I didn't see almost any news about the case coming up, mostly because I think most people assumed that they would vote in favor of allowing Texas to protect its borders, as you would imagine, but no.
Now, what it has led to is the next part of your story, which is absolutely fantastic.
Which, we just mentioned, of course, ACB, as well as a lot of Republicans always being the ones who flip over to the Democrats, always being the one who, they always kowtow to all their demands. Greg Abbott has basically, and this is a post by Greg Abbott, this is not over. The Texas razor wire is an effective deterrent to illegal crossings that the Biden encourages. I will continue to defend Texas's constitutional authority to secure the border and prevent the Biden administration from destroying our property. And you point this out to me. He has a very creative justification as to how he's able to enforce the border, and it really is pretty much brilliant. So he put out this statement, and what they're doing is they're talking about Article 1, Section 10, Clause 3, and I have this pulled up right here as well. No state shall, without the consent of Congress, lay any duty of tonnage, keep troops, or ships of war in times of peace, enter into any agreement or compact with another state or with a foreign power, or engage in war, unless actually invaded, or in such imminent danger as will not admit of delay. So he's basically declared this as Texas actually being invaded, which we've been calling this an invasion for quite a while now. So it is an impressive way of justifying his acts constitutionally and making sure they continue to keep National Guard there. So despite the SCOTUS's ruling, and despite the administration sending even more border agents over there, they are still holding the line. And not only are they still holding the line, I had one over here. Here we go. They're putting up more border defenses. They aren't just holding to saying, well, we'll see what happens. No, they're actively putting up even more border defenses at this very moment. I mean, this is, I know obviously we love when governors stand up to the federal government, right? I mean, we're more.
This is leadership, and it's constitutional.
Hey, Maggie Flowers, thanks for subscribing.
Flores.
Flores. I couldn't see it.
DJ's wife, Maggie. Yeah, man.
I couldn't read it off of the corner over here. Well,
but yeah, no. So this, to me, I love the tactic that he's using. I love the justification that he's using. It's basically what he's done is he put his razor wire on his flag, and he looked Santa Ana in the eye and said, "Come and take it." And I like it.
Now, here's the only part that is somewhat concerning. Is this almost a Fort Sumter situation happening here?
So it's gonna force Biden's hand, right? If you come in and try to do something about this, then that is a very similar situation. You're going to send federal troops to come in and stop this, to allow more people to come in. So either he does nothing and looks weak, or he does something and looks like a tyrant.
Well, so in a way, this is almost kind of a reverse Sumter, isn't it? Because I mean, with Sumter, obviously it was the Union soldiers continued to hold a fort that Lincoln actually told everyone that he was going to abandon anyway. So when the Confederate troops got there, they expected to abandon fort for the most part, found the Union troops there, and then Lincoln, of course, moved the ships in position to a point where the Confederacy had to either decide to completely back off their entire plans or assault the fort. And it kind of forced the Confederates' hands into assaulting the fort for them wanting to secede from the Union. This is kind of the reverse of that, where the state is now forcing the federal government's hand to see what they'll do. So it should be kind of interesting to see how it all plays out in the end. I mean, it might not play out particularly well, but it is kind of interesting to see kind of a reverse situation of that.
Hey, I'll be willing to go and live with my buddies in the Free Republic of Texas when when
you got enough buddies
down
over there too where you could do it.
We just got to get across the border with our weapons and ammo that we've got stocked up, and then we'll go in like Davy Crockett and just hope it ends better for us.
I think you mentioned Davy Crockett. I want to pull this up right here. You know, one of the true journalistic outlets there are, the Babylon Bee. Texas places razor wire around the Alamo for last stand against Biden.
So, you know, we've been cleaning things out and going through a lot of your old toys and things from when you were here. We found this DVD that had a lot of pictures on it, and it was from our trip. So I was just looking at a picture of us standing in front of the Alamo from many, many years ago.
You know, I always hear people say
razor wire though.
I always hear people complain, like online, you see like, you know, places that will be unimpressive to you and all that stuff. And the Alamo seems to make that list quite a bit. And I don't get it. I love the Alamo. Like, if you're in the area, go see the Alamo. It's really cool. Like, I guess people say it's supposed to be, imagine it being bigger, but the fact it's actually smaller just makes it even more impressive, actually.
Yeah, and it's just a few steps from the Riverwalk. So just to go take in all the sights of San Antonio.
Yeah, go grab
eat some good Tex-Mex.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
By the way, DJ said, count me in on moving to Texas. But this is getting to a situation where, I mean, depending on how it plays out, will be analyzed for the next 100 years probably. I mean, this is like one of those moments when it comes to American history, I think, here. That's kind of starting to happen. Do states have the ability to defend themselves like this?
And no governor has ever invoked the clause, as far as what I've read so far. I can't find any evidence that it's ever happened.
So did no governor ever?
So this will be a test of the constitutionality, and so you're right. This will be studied for a long time to come.
Like, I mean, obviously no governor will have dared do it during the Civil War, because anyone who tried to take power from Lincoln, they faced the consequences pretty quickly. But during 1812, did no governor try to do it then at all?
Apparently not, and it could be wrong because it was a cursory look to see if there was anything that came up, and so you know, don't hold me to it, but it doesn't look like it's been invoked in this way before.
Listen, if they can misinterpret the Constitution in all the many ways they have, we can interpret this part of the bill however the hell we like.
Well, I know this isn't even a weird interpretation. This is reading it directly,
very directly.
Yeah. This is word for word what it says.
So, and they try to play those type of games all the time when looking at the Constitution, like they do with the 14th Amendment when it comes to birthright citizenship. So, hey, I've been saying it for a while, right? Let's play the same game they're playing. If they're going to sit there and play hardball, we have to play hardball. This is a direct interpretation of the Constitution. There is the legal right is there. Now let's move the ball forward. Let's keep moving on with this. And you know what? Anything that moves that Overton window of states' rights over federal rights, I'm all for it.
Yeah. It's kind of funny to me that this whole birthright citizenship thing. I never really heard you get too much on it until you started getting after Nikki Haley.
You know, it's funny. When I was working in politics, I had to actually defend like a couple things involving it, especially stuff like DACA and stuff like that, because the person we were endorsing was in favor of it. And it was like the hardest thing ever to try to find some way of justifying it in my mind. Part of the reason why I don't think I'll ever go back to doing stuff like that. It was like the first politician I worked with came out against the Second Amendment. I was like, well, screw it. I got to get out of this one. And then this group now wants to support stuff like
that's a little
DACA.
extreme. He wasn't completely against the Second Amendment. He was just way too far from where we would be to the Second Amendment.
Listen, if you say that you are forced by a law to get approval from the government to exercise your constitutional right, I think that's against Second Amendment, because now you're turning it to a privilege, not a right.
It was bad. And what it was is just like it happens all the time. He gave in to the pressure from the shooting that happened at the courthouse,
which did happen like right next to all of us, but still.
Yeah, we were right 2 buildings down, but again, he just gave in to the leftist pressure instead of standing his ground on the Constitution.
Now, and for those of you who are,
I think that was more of a wimp out and thinking I'm going to ride the wave for my own personal benefit instead of standing for principle. And that's even worse to me than anything is that type of an attitude.
I'm not going to entirely just call him out by name, but what I will say is, for anyone wondering, it was a local election around the area. It wasn't like a big, federal election. But the whole idea that he wanted to put...
for DJ, this is in Virginia Beach. It's before your time in Virginia Beach, but it wasn't.
Hey, he's still there. He won. But hey, he was all right with it. He was a very nice guy. He was a very nice guy, actually. But yeah, he came out basically saying that you should be forced under law to attend gun classes, and the government will not provide, of course, any. It would have to be charged by you, of course. You would have to pay the money, of course, making it so people who are impoverished, they can't afford to go to a gun class and all that stuff and take time out of their week in order to practice their Second Amendment right. If someone needs a firearm to protect themselves, they should have a firearm to protect themselves. Simple as that. It was.
Now you're down in the People's Republic of Mecklenburg, so it might be hard to find a candidate. But let's just say that you could find a candidate who is really principle based, and one that you could really believe in. Would you get back in the game?
Oh, that would be tough. I don't know, because I'll be perfectly honest. I am not that great when it comes to just getting a bunch of volunteers out there and doing stuff. Like, don't get me wrong, I got to a point where I had a good little crew, but I'll be honest, I'm not, what's his name? The guy who travels constantly signing people. Scott Pressler. Yeah, I'm not Scott Pressler. I don't have that in me. For one, I feel like I'm a bit too confrontational sometimes, to a point where it kind of frustrates me meeting a lot of stupid people and trying to get them to vote. I'd rather, you know me, I'd rather try to pass a law to make it so you have to pass a test so you can vote.
Yeah, you got to build the support for that too. So you're out of luck. I was just curious if you thought you'd ever get back into it.
The only thing.
So do you remember the story about? Do you remember the story about Alan? That was the candidate that Alan got invited to what he thought he was getting invited by a pretty girl to the champagne party. So he goes and carries bottles of champagne, and it turned out they were sitting there making political signs. It was a campaign party.
Listen, I've been at enough of those campaign events. I'm sure everyone appreciated the champagne he brought.
He was very disappointed, but he spent the day with the pretty girl, so you can't go wrong, I guess.
I think we could say which candidate that was, because that was Scott Taylor. That was a big federal election, obviously, there. Then he tried running for Senate and kind of failed pretty bad that one too. I only met him a couple times. He seemed like a nice guy, but I didn't really get a chance to really engage that much with him. So, but I wasn't at that point. I think I was still living in. Well, no, I think we ran for Senate. I was in Virginia at that point, but I think originally when I was still in North Carolina. So I didn't work too much with him. Only got to meet him a few times. I love how every time we start jumping into this sort of stuff, we start going on this whole tangent about all sorts of different things.
Well, it started with the Alamo and defending, and of course you bring up Babylon Bee. If you're going to bring the bee up, it's hard to stay on target. But I think the analogy of come and take it is very apt in this case. And for people that don't know history, they put the cannon on the flag. They told Santa Anna, come and take it if you want it. And That was kind of the leading right into the Alamo. So I don't want this to be Texas's last stand, but I want Texas to take a stand because somebody has to.
Well, it's kind of funny because people have said for a while now that Texas is one of the only states that has really any ability to actually legally secede from the Union at this point, because they were the only state that was originally a country when they were adopted. So them seceding and becoming, it just goes back to them being their own country, which they already were. And let's face it, the size of Texas, it's already big enough to be a country in most places of the world. I don't think people realize how small most countries actually are. Like when you look at a map that overlays like America over Europe, it's pretty shocking actually, like how small England is, right? Like it's very tiny. So if they could be their own country, well, Texas sure as heck can. Plus, they have enough natural resources there, they can handle things pretty well. Not that the government will let it be, but
yeah, it would. There's a few challenges in between, but it's fun to think about.
I mean, let's face
it. There's a few states that would provide support right away. So there was a few. Kristi Noem jumped right into their defense, and a couple other Republican governors stepped in to back up what he's doing. So.
Hey everyone, thank you so much for watching the video. This video is a clip from our Summit podcast, which is live here on the channel on Wednesdays at 9 p.m. So if you enjoyed this, feel free to join and be part of the conversation. But before you go, please make sure, of course, you like and subscribe to the channel, and we hope to be seeing you again real soon.